If you haven't heard of Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. Completely free. I love free. I'm sure you love free. So that should be motivation enough. But the cool thing about it is, it allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. And now, back to the show. Hey guys, I'm Christina Prudent, and this is Enchanted Ink. Welcome to the podcast. Before we dive into today's topic, I just want to stop and say a quick thank you. It's only been a few weeks, but so far the response has been awesome. So thanks for tuning in. Thank you so much for all of the comments and interactions on social media. It's just been really cool getting to know you all. So yeah. Anyway, today I want to talk about dragons. Mythical creatures have always been an interest of mine, but I've never given a ton of thought to dragons. They're, again, one of those myths that's so incredibly common that most people have a good bit of knowledge about them without even thinking about how you got it. So, I don't know. They're just in every popular story and fairy tale. You see them guarding a princess in a tower or hiding their riches from hobbits and men. But today we'll be focused on the Eragon series. Now, you've heard me use the word ubiquitous in pretty much every episode, but to be fair, the main motivation behind this show is to explore the most common myths and legends that we take for granted. And dragons are truly ubiquitous across dozens of cultures in different landscapes and different climates all over the world. China seems to have the oldest dragon tradition, dating back over 5,000 years. In Chinese tradition, dragons symbolize good fortune, especially because they bring the rain and good harvest. Even in the 12-year Chinese zodiac, the dragon years are thought to be the most auspicious, the luckiest. And to this day, the dragon motif is extremely popular in Chinese imagery. From Chinese New Year, like lanterns and the parade puppets, to racing boats, to logos for products and restaurants, just everything. And then you come to the opposite side of the world, and even in ancient Mesoamerica, the Aztecs and the Mayans pretty famously believed in the serpent god Quetzalcoatl. So every culture had a dragon origin story, and realistically dragons are the most believable of all of the cryptids because people were finding fossils well before they had any way to make sense of them. So they're seeing dinosaur bones and just assuming that they belong to dead dragons. And not even just dinosaur, there's also giraffe and elephant bones that were discovered and kind of got mixed into this too. But there are fundamentalist groups that claim that the existence of dragon lore is evidence that dinosaurs and humans coexisted at some point. And they basically think that humans must have seen dinosaurs alive and kept those stories going, and that's where the origin, comes from. And that dragons only went extinct after Noah's flood. So the scientific consensus, of course, is that that's not right, and dinosaurs were long gone by the time humans arrived on the scene. But in most early Western dragon myths, the dragon serves as pretty much the opposition to the hero. They're just there so the hero has something to slay. One interesting thing about dragon lore, though, is that it's both fluid and extensive in what can actually be considered a dragon. It can almost apply to any reptile of unusual size, with various qualifiers like number of legs, wings or no wings, and like other physical attributes, including some that are just super bizarre. Like in Greek mythology, we see Zeus versus Typhon, the fire-breathing dragon with snakes for legs, or Hercules versus the Hydra that sprouts more heads as you cut them off. But for today, I want to talk about European dragon lore, the medieval dragons that we're all familiar with. Christopher Paolini does a great job of bringing them to life in Eragon. He gives them dimension and personalities in a way that we don't often see. Eragon is the first book in the Inheritance Cycle series by Christopher Paolini. It tells the story of Eragon, a young boy who happens upon a blue stone while traveling through a mountain range near his home. He eventually discovers that the stone is a dragon egg when it hatches and the dragon Sapphira is born. Overnight, his simple life is shattered, and he's thrust into a new world of destiny, magic, and power. With only an ancient sword and the advice of an old storyteller for guidance, Eragon and his young dragon must navigate the dangerous terrain and dark enemies of an empire ruled by a king whose evil knows no bounds. We're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're talking all things dragon.
This iTunes Top 5 album is out now. I put a spell on you, yeah, 'cause you're mine. Featuring epic brand new pop anthems and classic big band hits.
You won't admit you love me.
From me, British singer-songwriter Shane Hampshire.
Your side, let the rain fall down on me.
Search for Shane Hampshire's debut album, available to stream now.
All right, so as we know from every fairy tale ever, medieval dragons are typically described as large, scaly, fire-breathing reptiles with leathery, bat-like wings and long tails. And that's no different in Eragon. Sapphira, Eragon's dragon, is described as having 4 legs and 2 wings with spikes down her neck and back and curved horns. And the number of legs matters. It designates what kind of dragon it is. The top 3 that you usually see are dragons, which have 4 legs and 2 wings, wyverns, which have 2 back legs and 2 wings, so no arms, no like forelegs, and worms or serpents, and they have no limbs. So this is like very common imagery for Chinese dragons, as we talked about earlier, and they can still fly despite not having limbs of any kind. So it's typically what you see in like anime. It always makes me think of Dragon Ball Z. But going back, the oldest recognizable image of a Western-style dragon appears in an illustration from Harley Manuscript 3244, which was written around the year 1260. And when it comes to manuscripts, they're typically designated differently, so it would be MS Harley 3244 if you wanted to look it up. As a matter of fact, I'll try to track down a clear copy of it and post it on enchantedingpodcast.com so you can see. Now, in terms of dragon magic, there are some commonalities across all of the various lore that remains consistent in Eragon as well. The first being the qualities of dragon skin. Dragon skin is said to be very strong and almost impenetrable. So we see it in a lot of stories used for armor and weapons, Or in Harry Potter, dragon skin gloves that they use for potions and herbology and pretty much anything that they need protection from, right? And then dragon's blood supposedly has various magical properties and is often used in potions or in the ink used to write down certain spells to make them more powerful. So once again, Harry Potter reference, if you remember, they're assigned the essay, "What are the 12 uses of dragon's blood?" And what's funny about that is that some of them are mythical and some of them are more practical, because in the real world, dragon's blood refers to a bright red plant resin that's primarily used to make dyes and incense, but also violin varnish. So there you go, a little fun fact of the episode. So in the book, we see all types of interesting and unique dragon lore, some of which draws from the established mythology, but some that is, of course, completely specific to the series. One of the most interesting things to me is the idea of the dragon riders. They're the ambassadors and peacekeepers between men and elves, and really all of the races. And what's interesting about them is that the dragon chooses its rider before it's born. We learn that the dragon can stay in its egg for decades, and the egg chooses when to hatch and for whom by using its magic to look into the holder's heart and mind and judge if they'd be a good fit, kind of like how the wand chooses the wizard. Now, once the egg hatches and the rider touches the dragon for the first time, they develop a mark on their palm, and they become able to communicate with the dragon and other creatures through telepathy. The bond is obviously magical and incredibly strong, but can only be broken by death. So as a result, dragon riders live incredibly long lives because they're linked to the lives of their dragons. So that's kind of the premise, really, of the Inheritance Cycle series, and I just thought that that was so cool because it is a unique spin on your typical using the dragon as a prop. They have their own independent magic, and they use it for themselves, not just to serve their rider. Oh, one last thing that I want to mention is the fact that riders can use magic too. And it comes from an innate power in their body, and they control it using the ancient language of the elves. But even though the riders have magic, they're not sorcerers or wizards. So this is what I was getting at, since it ties in with the previous Magic Wand episode where we talk about the different designations. In this series, sorcerers use spirits to perform magic, whereas witches and wizards use potions and rituals. So again, all of that terminology means something completely different depending on what story you're in and who wrote it. But I don't know, sorcerer is always going to be super shady to me. They're always the ones doing something that they shouldn't. So I'm going to go ahead and say that they replace warlock for the most negative magical reputation. Anyway, if you find yourself particularly interested in dragons and want to keep going with the story, remember that Eragon is only the first of 4 books in the Inheritance Cycle. I haven't finished all of them yet, but so far I really like it. I would recommend that you keep reading. I hear there is also an Eragon movie that my understanding is it was not very well received. But actually, I might need to start a series of spin-off episodes called like Movie Night or something, because some of these film adaptations are kind of hit or miss, and I want to talk about them. So let me know, reach out to me, and let me know if that's something that you guys would be interested in hearing, because I think it would be fun. Well, that's it for me. If you have any questions or anything that you want to share about dragons, let me know. I want to hear from you. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Enchanted Ink Podcast, on Twitter at Enchanted Ink Pod, and our home on the web, enchantedinkpodcast.com. And if you like the show and want to hear more, make sure you subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to listen. And leave a review. Let me and everyone else know how much you love the show so we can continue to grow and bring you great content. Thanks, guys. See you next time.